That's a very straightforward story, right? Would man have been better off not to have been given the choices? No.
Okay, but God has the ability to see both front and back. He knew that was going to happen. Did he not?
He knows everything.
So if he knew everything...
But he gives you the choice, right? If I knew, I have a good assessment of whether you'll fail or be successful, but you wouldn't want to be given the choice?
Sure.
Okay, well that was exactly what happened. God gave them the choice. Did God know they would fail? Certainly God knew they would fail. God knows everything, right?
Right.
But be given the choice.
So there's a...
being given the choice and failing is certainly better than non-existence.
God knew that they could succeed.
What? God knew they could succeed.
So let me ask you this. You know, the car, in actual fact, God didn't put the car up in the hill. He put them at the bottom, but something could go, they could do something wrong. Whatever happened, the car, I'm not sure about the car analogy, but the thing is that he had to erase it. And he actually, I believe he said, correct me if I'm wrong, that, you know, he'll never do this again, erase this condition, ever again. He'll live with it. I'm not really sure I get it, but it happened.
Yeah, that means something else. You see, as we explained, when we learned those parashiyos, that God said that I'm going to reconfigure the world in such a way, right, that human beings are going to be limited in the choices they make, to the extent that they never can bring the world to a point of destruction, which is not the same thing as saying that justice is suspended. God is simply saying that until now there was an absolute gift of free will to the extent that you could even destroy the world, or cause the world to be destroyed. Beyond this point, man's free will is limited. It'll never come to that. Man is not given the ability to make such far-reaching decisions that could result in the destruction of the world. That's something else. But we have to understand that the alternative to believing that suffering has meaning is to believe that God committed an immoral act by creating the universe.
Or is he a sleeping giant?
Pardon?
Or is he a sleeping giant?
Being a sleeping giant is also immoral. If you have the power and you go to sleep, that's an immoral act.
So was he asleep when we had the Holocaust?
There has to be some meaning. Do I know what the meaning is? I don't know what the meaning is. Right? I don't have to be able to know what the meaning is. That's what faith is. But I don't see the alternative as being any better. Right? The alternative. You're
a rational human being.
Yeah, I am very rational. That's what I'm saying.
So how can you? So
I'm saying that I would not do something, right, that would cause innocent people to suffer needlessly without meaning. I wouldn't do anything like that.
So you're making an assumption. You first of all, you are a nice person. I know that.
How do you know?
90% of the time.
Okay.
Anyways, but notwithstanding that, you're very nice, and that's fine. But you also know, in this world, I mean, you're drawing you're doing a binary discussion, and it's gray. The world is gray, so the binary has to be done in hex, not 1 and 0. So we have a condition. We've seen it in North America with the economy. These people did very well for them personal selves at the cost of many. We saw that, right? About 5-6 years ago, it all came to fruition, and it could even get worse now. It could be a propagating event economically. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not going to say who, because I once was told, don't say any names. Okay, I won't say any names. So so we see a condition where the consequences here, the guy gets away, makes billions, and tons of people suffer. And many times it happens. They walk a narrow line. And not only that, they have the ability with the guilt that they have to say, please, forget it, here, just keep this. I'm sure that kind of stuff is happening.
But that's a simple question. You're saying like this, that at some point, right, God should intervene to prevent those things from happening.
No, I'm not, I don't think I'm saying that. I'm just asking, I'm not saying what God should do. I'm not going to tell God what he should do. He has to have a plan.
But you're saying like this, in other words, here we're talking about evil that is inflicted by people through choices they make. people choose to.
Well, I'm sorry. Our initial discussion. You see, you have this space and you have this item, and I find that all of you rabbis speak in this context. And the part that confuses me is like I can understand the merit in many things. There are some things I can understand the merit. I have my own personal challenges. In fact, sometimes something drops on my head and I go, I'm sorry. Whatever I did, I'm sorry, right? We've had that. But when there are conditions that I look at and I'm saying, what could that be? What could the value be for those people? I don't know, what's the challenge? I've had a personal challenge as well. I've had some. But to me, I'm very, very fortunate. Yeah, but those people, their kids dying, or in the Holocaust, people throwing children and landing on the bayonet, I can't figure it out.
Again, you're raising two different issues. There's one issue of God-caused suffering.
Well, I'm not saying
another issue of man-caused suffering.
Well, I don't.
Right?
I'm saying I'm sorry. I'm not saying God or man. I'm saying that there is a condition that has occurred, and I'm giving you two examples, quite frankly. There is a condition that occurred, and within that, it just doesn't seem rational, because it just doesn't seem rational.
But I'm just asking a question. Let's talk about suffering that's caused by man. Whether it's the Holocaust or whether it's people through financial machinations cause other people to suffer. At what point should God intervene to stop it? Let's talk about a small evil, right? I park in your parking space.
I mean,
right? Which creates an inconvenience for you. You have to find a parking space, you might have to walk, etc. So I've chosen to inconvenience you with parking in your reserved spot. Right? At what point should God intervene?
Third time you do it.
Right? That's the question. At what point should he intervene? Should he intervene at the point that a Nazi is contemplating killing a baby? Should he intervene at the point where someone is contemplating a financial deal which will cause someone else to lose his pension? Right? Or should he intervene at the point where I am about to park in your parking space?
I don't have a good answer for you, frankly.
Right?
I mean, what we saw, so we have an example. What happened with Moshe and the Jews going through. He intervened.
But I'm just raising the point. You see, to expect that God should always intervene, right? Let's say God would intervene, and there would have been no Holocaust and no financial meltdown, everything. The worst evils that would occur are people parking in your space. You probably have the same grievance. Like, why does God allow this suffering to happen? People parking in my space, right? If that would be the worst evil that would happen, then people would probably treat that as a great theological problem. See, the problem of evils that are caused by people's choices is not a theologically serious problem, because the truth is that the whole scheme of this world is dependent on people being given the license to make choices. Right? Many of those choices will be good choices, and many of those choices will be bad choices, and the consequences of our choices will be experienced, for better or for worse. But that is how the world was established, and I think that the alternative to that is a world in which we are, in a sense, robots, where we have no choices. There's nothing we do, because the truth is, not choosing to do good is also evil. So if God would have to intervene to prevent us from making evil choices, that means He'd have to intervene and force us to do good, because not doing good is also an evil.
I mean, I understand the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, and we need these things to appreciate the other things.
I'm not saying that either. And I'm saying that the whole scheme of creation is that man should exercise free will and make choices, and therefore there has to be options that exist. A person has to be able to choose good and bad, and sometimes that will necessitate is choosing bad. And whether there'll be rewards and punishments, that's how God judges the world. But there has to be free will. The question which is more serious is the question of natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes, that type of thing. We're not dealing with choices that human beings make. We're dealing with things that are God caused. That's a more serious theological problem. But even that, to say that those events are meaningless is also presumptuous. The truth is that to a great extent, that the choices we make, whether to do good or to do bad, right, are created by the world in which we live. In other words, we have we're a society, and the question is, what will we devote our resources to? We devote our resources to meaningful things, to trivial things. To a certain extent, that is because there is suffering in the world. If there was no illness in the world, right, then there'd be no challenge for a society to devote its resources to healthcare or to nonsensical things. In other words, there has to be a certain amount of suffering in the world, evil in the world, in order to create the parameters for the challenges that we're given.
Is there something I understand, but I understand what you're saying, but it's to me it's a very gray area, and I don't know if I'm articulating myself. But there are some things I can understand the challenge and the outcome. There are some things that don't
that's fine. No one is expected to understand everything. If we could understand how God runs the world, we'd be God ourselves, right?
I have enough trouble with my own personal.
Right. To a certain extent, that's what faith is. Faith is to understand. Listen, God was intelligent enough to create the world, right? That means we have to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, right? That he's smart enough not to commit a obvious injustice. In other words, if we are, with our limited intelligence, are smart enough to recognize that certain things shouldn't be, right? He certainly should recognize they shouldn't be, and yet they happen. So what is the alternative? The only alternative is that it must be that there is a reason for it, which is perhaps beyond our comprehension. But there must be a reason, because to imagine that he would allow or tolerate such an injustice is inconceivable. If we see it as an injustice, he also certainly sees it as an injustice.
So do you ever sort of challenge your personal self, because you're a religious man? I don't know if you've been religious all your life, but you are today, and you're very smart, and I understand that. Do you ever waver and say, I don't get this, and knock your head against a brick wall? Your personal self?
Frankly, no. I'll tell you, maybe I'm not as compassionate, but I'll tell you the truth, that the possibility of imagining, genuine injustices in the world that God tolerates is so inconceivable that I don't see it as a possibility worthy of contemplation.
It's interesting.
It's like an illogical possibility.
Okay.
Which doesn't mean I'm happy with everything, right? I believe there are plenty of things I wish were different.
I'm sure.
But to imagine to develop a overview of the scheme of the world which provides for injustices that God tolerates is just, it just doesn't make sense. It just seems inconceivable.
Okay.
What are the answers? I don't have the answers. I don't know the answers.
You're a better man than me.
Right.
I have great challenges with it. I personally have huge challenges, and you know what? He's been exceptionally nice to me. I have personal challenges because of my father waking up at 2:30 in the morning all my life when I was around, crying, and not even knowing until after he died that he had a family, a son and daughter, a son and wife. I didn't know. And yet I thought it was because he may have buried his parents and didn't even know. I don't know. For me, it's just it's embedded in me, and it's always a challenge. And yet, you know what? My daughter's deaf. I'll tell you, my daughter's deaf, and it was horrific at the beginning. And now she has her master's degree in deaf education. And I look at it after, and I thank God for many reasons, which I can tell you later. But at the bottom line was that even though I had a challenge, and Dear Abby wrote a thing about how God picks people and draws a raisin on these specific people. At the end of the day, I didn't realize it, but I was very lucky because I was able to take the challenge and take the path and dedicate whatever I had to do so she'd have success. And I'm so thankful for that.
Look, I think that's a tremendous thing. I think you have to raise the driven level and ask yourself the question. There are people that have handicaps and overcome adversity and make successful lives for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And ask them, what is their position on abortion? Would you have preferred to have been aborted, for him?
That's rhetorical.
Of course I'll say, of course not. I have a meaningful life and a productive life, and of course I'm glad that I exist.
And then there's so when
we talk about the disappointment, if sure a person has a child with a handicap, it's so such a disappointment and so painful and so on and so forth. But it's only painful in terms of the expectations we have. In other words, you're expecting a child, and you have it all figured out. I have their upbringing planned, and their teenage years, and their marriage, and I see grandchildren, and I see the whole course of their career in front of me. And then the child is born with a handicap, and it comes out that some of those expectations aren't going to be met. That pain is to a certain extent self-generated. And I've caused myself to suffer because I've come to this with a set of expectations which are now not going to be realized apparently. But maybe if I would say, listen, whatever God sends my way, right, I'm going to see the good in it. I may discover that a lot of the suffering that exists is self-caused.
Possibly, or you dig deep and do your best. But sorry, I wanted to continue. So I'm very fortunate. And the way I realized it was my wife worked with children who essentially have a lifespan of about 19 to 20 years. And I remember her coming home and saying, they're almost catatonic. My wife came home and said, I made one, my wife doesn't make a lot of money. She came home and she said, I made one smile. And I looked and I was like, I said, that is like nothing. To make a child who, they will, and these children passed away very soon after. And I remember her telling me about these children. It was her first opportunity, and I could imagine her ridiculously being tuckered out, and she made one smile. She'd come over and made one smile. I actually made them move and smile. And I thought, that's amazing. I was so proud, like you can't imagine. But I still felt for those people. This is a condition of, there was no end, or there was an end, and it was so challenging. I don't get it.
But you have to ask them. They probably don't have the capacity to answer that question. But you'd have to be in their shoes and ask, in their position, is existence better than non-existence? It's not a question of what I think or what others think. The question is, what do they think? And if they could articulate it, maybe they would say that, of course, it's better for us to exist than not to exist.
It's a bigger. Sorry, I always get on this tangent because it's
right. It's an important subject. But I think that all too often, we go into the trap of thinking of ourselves. This person is inconvenient for me, right? It places limitations in my life, etc., etc., etc. That is a sad thing. You have to ask for that person. Is that person's existence?
Well, I'm actually not. I'm very lucky. Listen, I just told you a story. I'm very lucky. It's like, I can tell you stories where I'm not going to say a squirtle, but I believe that he was there for me. I believe, and I count my blessings. I can tell you stories that are just unbelievable, and people look at me like I'm crazy, those that don't believe in Hashem. But I'm going beyond me. I watch TV and I look and I just go, how does this happen? And that's a shocking element for me. That's the part. I go beyond me. Look, I have a house, I have a nice wife, I have children, and it's not without challenges, but compared to what I see, it's nothing.
Watch less TV.
No, that means I'm putting my blinders on, and that's not fair either.
No. Watching TV
Not
right,
watching,
is
like,
putting on blinders. You think TV is an accurate prediction of presentation of reality? If a person doesn't watch TV, then they're blinding themselves to reality.
News,
right?
The news.
The news, television news. Television news is what they want to show you. It's not reality.
I have to tell you, I used to film sporting events.
Yeah.
Specifically race cars. Right?
Yeah.
The only thing anybody was ever interested in.
The car crashes.
That's right.
I'm sure.
You understand that, like, a race can go on for 2-3 hours.
Well, I worked on law school. I couldn't understand why they even liked to race. Because all you saw was a little corner. You ning, ning.
Every camera's on
What's
the
going
corner.
on here?
Because that's where you see the accident happening.
Was on the corners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The two things that they liked was the accidents and the alcohol.
And that's news. That's actually what news is. It's the car crashes.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
it's not the race.
No. See, television news is something else. You see, television news, by its nature, because it's visual, right, doesn't provide any context.
So is it reality?
Right? You see the problems that are seemingly unsolvable. There's no background. There's no explanation. There's no. All you see is the fire and the explosion and
The theater,
etc. But why these things happen or how they could have been prevented, and and the fact that it is very rare. You don't see, right?
We don't see good news because the good news newspaper.
Good news isn't
they
news.
tried it once and it never sold. I understand, but
The television news is not.
you not watch the news or you read the newspaper?
I read print media to a great
I'm
extent.
sure you do.
Right, but I wouldn't rely on television for my news. First, besides the political bias, which is a totally different issue. It's what they don't show you in the news is what they don't want you to see. In other words, the government, for example, does not want you to know or to think that these two fellows in Boston, right, are were trained by Al Qaeda or
they're searching for their motivation.
Right. Yeah. And as a consequence, it was very important to the government to get them to clam up as fast as possible. Give them their Miranda rights, right? Stop interrogating them, and so on and so forth. Because what could come out of a interrogation would fly in the face of the scenario which the government wants to present, which is that terrorism is under control, and except for a few loose cannons out there, doing things. So and the media is very much behind this. This is a scenario that the media wants to present. So I think that political bias, in especially in television media, is something which is a very serious problem. So I don't know, if you want to keep your eyes open, I would say watch less television than more television. But that's a side issue.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. The children in different parts of Africa, the abuse, the 60 minutes. Maybe they are glorifying it. I don't know. But
the best question: how much coverage was given to the fact that President Bush's AIDS initiative in Africa saved tens of millions of lives?
Probably a small corner of it.
Very, 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 very
like
little coverage, even during his administration, and certainly not today.
No.
Right? There's good news too. Whatever his approval rating here is, now he's up to 47%, I think. Which is
Who's approval rating? Bush?
Bush, yeah. But in Africa, he is a hero.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a good story, though, from the point of view of the media. George Bush is not a hero.
In Africa, he is considered a savior.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never. I'll have to research that. because there's so many people out in Asia that hate the Americans, and especially Bush. It's interesting. I'll have to do my research. I didn't know that. It's not very public, is it? Are you, by the way, you are a Republican, aren't you?
I'm
mean, if you're a libertarian,
I'm not a voter. I am a libertarian. Sonically, but
does it?
You know, the Republican Party is Bush was not was a big government Republican in many ways.
He was not what? Sorry?
He was a big government Republican in many ways.
Uh-huh.
You see, but if you want to talk politics, I'll just mention one thing: that the accusation that Bush ran out of deficit, right? Funding the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and so on and so forth. It's important to understand that the criticism is totally off base. See, it all depends what you see as the fundamental role of government, right? To a libertarian, like myself, right? The only
You guys will turn the lights off for you later?
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The only fundamental role of
Well,
government,
lots of front doors
right,
all
is to
closed.
protect us
I think Levy comes before 11 to lock up.
Okay, right.
from internal and external threats. But I have nothing against a deficit per se, right? You have to spend money. You have to spend money, right? If it's necessary to keep us safe, to defend us, then that's money well spent, right? The question is that to spend the money on Keynesian experiments is nonsensical. Things that everyone knew could not work.
So I don't want to get into your libertarian. We can talk that. We could. I mean, no, unless we can get somebody of service.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that later. But because we'll get
Politics next time. Next week's politics.
It's fine.
Okay.
I enjoy your stuff, but I will.
Ego will fight. We'll argue is good.
I mean, I have some very. I mean, I'm here. I'm only here because my son is becoming a rabbi. I'm trying to figure it out.
Where does he live?
A place called Jerusalem, in Ramat Eshkol.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Where's he studying?
A place called Aish.
Very
They
nice.
aged him. What's the terminology? He's been aged? Yeah, and I have a cousin who seems to be a well-known rabbi as well. I think I told you.